You started looking at the video lectures I have sent, or have you completed the listening to them? Any questions do you have? You can ask now. So in this class, let us discuss if you have any questions or doubts on the video lectures I have sent, especially the last video lectures. That's regression, logistic regression, neural networks, and convolution neural networks. Okay, so on that, let us discuss any of the questions or doubts you have. Then let us see if on the overall plan of the semester. So we are not still clear on the timelines, but still I will try to give some hints on how we go about. Yeah. So before I start, before we discuss on those aspects, I request you people to ask, should I share the slides to get your doubts clearly conveyed? Should we start with logistic regression first or convolution neural networks?
So I have some doubt related to convolution neural network.
Okay.
Like final thing, yeah.
Okay, so let me share these slides on convolution neural networks. Okay, these we will discuss. So I assume that logistic regression is reasonably clear. It's directly follows from regression. Okay, and I assume that it is reasonably clear. Okay, so these are the slides on convolution neural networks. I will just go through the slides. Okay, wherever you have doubt, you can ask, or you can ask doubt. I will directly go to the slide. So what is the doubt you have, Akshay?
So I have doubt related to kernel initialization. That portion is not clear to me. Weight initialization, kernel initialization of CNN.
What is that kernel initialization?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I think the process of convolution is clear to you all. Okay, and then how the architecture dimensions. Okay, we calculate from layer to layer. I hope that's also clear. Okay, and then where there are multiple number of maps, not just single map, then how do we come up to the next layer? Okay, with not 2D to 2D convolution, but here 3D to 2D convolution in some sense. Okay, so you have actually a weight kernel of 4x4, and there are 3 channels. So it is 4x4x3. Okay, that gets convolved to get a single map here. Like that, different such 4x4x3 weight kernels gets convolved to generate new maps. Okay, and then what is the importance of convolution? Why do we like the convolution neural networks use convolution, but for what? Can some of you answer quickly?
So less number of weights are required for it. Like for every layer we are getting so many different filters out features, and then we can subsample them.
Okay, fine. So let us one answer is through convolution operation, you need not have different weight for each of the neurons to the next layer of neurons. So you can have actually limited number of weight filters. Okay, weight elements to generate the next map. Okay, that's fine. That is sharing of weights is done through convolution operation, and that's one reason why they use convolution. Fine. Any other answers?
Less inference due to translation.
Less
inference due to translation, and we are keeping spatial domain as constant.
Okay, so directly you are using the data in 2 dimension or whatever original dimension. So the effect of small shifts, effect of small rotations can be easily taken care of, or in other words, the spatial information is preserved. Okay, in feature extraction. Okay, that's right. That's another point. Any other point? Why we apply convolution neural networks?
We have also seen that kernels can be used for feature extraction process and noise removal and many other tasks. So we are trying to learn these tasks. We are trying to means the convolution neural network should learn these tasks on their own.
Right.
So through backpropagation.
Right, right. That's in fact the very key or important process of convolution layer. So what it does is the process wise, you see there is an advantage in shared weights. So the number of weights that to generate the next map from the single map is less. That's fine. That's a implementation aspect. And the other thing that you mentioned, spatial details are preserved. That is also fine because you are taking convolution operation in 2-dimension or original data dimension. Now that is important to extract features in from the original data dimensions or the original data structure itself. So, but how do we extract features is through the process of convolution. So these kernels, whichever I am doing convolution, can give edges, right? It can also give corners. They can also give some smooth regions to removing noise. Okay, they can give different features. But on what does it depend? What features do they give? It depends upon the kernel, how we design this kernel or how we learn this kernel in convolution neural networks. So through the cost function, we have the provision or ability to learn the kernel itself. Okay, and this kernel will extract good features and complementary features in each of the layers, and thus they give very good features that are directed by the objective function or the loss function. Is this clear? Is this discussion clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. Okay. So then what is the advantage of the next layer, pooling layer?
Sir, we only preserve the dominant data.
We only preserve the dominant data. Very good. So the implication or the requirement of pooling layer is that, see, this and this doesn't matter for computer. Okay, in fact, it will be able to easily recognize as same A if they are at compact representation. Okay, at their like at this resolution. So for humans, it may be fine to have even minor details, but for a machine, especially to articulate or to give an inference like classification, okay, or decision making, you don't need the minute details. Okay, you need the compact and very nice representation of the features that you have extracted through convolution. That is done through sampling layer. Fine, very good. Okay, so then the next question is, what is difference between convolution neural networks and conventional feed-forward neural networks? So few things we discussed already, we mentioned, that is sharing of weights, okay, and then you preserving the original dimension of data, okay, and then applying convolution layer and followed by pooling layer. These are architectural differences. Any other differences you see between the convolution neural networks and the conventional neural networks? Yeah, any answer? Okay, so Akshay, what is the question you have asked?
So it's about kernel initialization.
Yeah, about kernel initialization.
How do we decide like what kind of kernel?
Right. Very good. Okay, so usually to answer your question, see, how do we initialize in neural networks?
It was like random initialization.
Right? Yeah.
Random initialization of weights is done according to the data. Yeah.
Correct. So random initialization in what range?
-1 to 1.
-1 to 1 is a simple like a crude suggestion. Okay, but ideally
Wiener filter we can use. Wiener filter, it was used like neutral Vernier filter, I guess.
What is that?
It was kind of initialization technique you told. Sometimes Gaussian random variable can be used. For the hidden layer, you told that 1 upon root to the number of hidden variables can be used as weights.
Right. Correct. So by uniform random numbers is correct. But the range in which we initialize depends upon the number of neurons here and number of neurons here in feedforward one neural network. If you have layer 1 and layer 2, if you want to connect the way, you want to initialize the weights connecting layer 1 to layer 2, then what do we do is, say N1 is the number of neurons in layer 1, N2 is the number of neurons in layer 2. Then minus 1 by root N1 to minus 1 plus 1 by root N1. That's the range. Okay. So based on the number of input neurons, you decide, okay, how many, what is the range in which I should initialize the weights. This essentially is guided by the activation functions we use there. That is usually sigmoid kind of activation functions. They saturate after, okay, after some values, right? So ideally we want to have a net value, that is summation over wi xi, is less than or equal to 1, in the sense that in the range minus 1 to 1. So because of that reason, we initialize them with the weights minus 1 by root N1 to plus 1 by root N1. Here also roughly the same. We also initialize here with uniform weights with both positive and negative values, because we want to see that they naturally converges, or they naturally lens, okay, in positive and negative space, considering that like algebraic sum, okay, rather than on going only on one side of learning for feature extraction. Okay, so if, for example, if I want to find edges, minus sign is mandatory, okay, in the kernel. Without, if I don't have minus 1, okay, I can't find the difference between 2 pixels, okay, in the image. And if I don't find difference, I don't get the gradient. Okay, so in that way, negative sign is necessary to find edges. Smoothing operation, all positive signs are necessary. Okay, so some such, given that we want to have both negative and positive values in initializing the weights. Only difference is that we initialize here based on the number of maps we have in input layer, output layer, and the dimension of the kernel. Okay, so essentially we find out fan in, which is the number of maps into dimension of kernel. Okay, and then fan out the number of maps in the output layer into dimension of the kernel. Okay, 1 by root fan in plus fan in, or is what is the range with which we initialize. Okay. So here you can note that 5 cross 5 is the weights. Okay, number of weights, and 6 into 5 cross 5 is essentially the number of kernels required here. Okay, it is added with a factor of input and output dimensions, because this will help us to see in when you have from input also having more number of maps to output having another set of maps. Okay, so if you have 6 maps here, the weight initialization range has to be different than if you have single map here. Okay, that is the reason you need to consider fan in and fan out as well in initializing weights. Both depend upon the kernel size. Is this clear?
Yes, sir. But why cannot we choose kernel size different from this? Like it is a hyperparameter, or like we have to experiment?
Yeah, you can choose. If you want to choose for each layer, you can choose different kernel size. But within the layer, also people use actually 5 cross 5 kernel to get one set of maps, 3 cross 3 kernel to get another set of maps. Okay, 7 cross 7 another set of maps, and then combine all these information and get this. So all that is possible. Those are all.
So is there any reason behind choosing these? Like why should we choose 3 cross 3 or 5 cross 5?
Yeah. So there are some reasons. See, if you choose, for example, 5 cross 5 here. Okay, so it looks at 5 cross 5 region and gives an inference. Okay, and if you choose 3 cross 3, it looks only 3 cross 3 region and gives an inference. If you take 11 cross 11 here, it takes 11 cross 11 region, okay, and gives an inference. What is the difference? The receptive field for each of the feature value here or neuron here that looks at in the original image is different. So if you look at small region, you are taking decision mainly on the local information. Okay, more and more local information. If you are looking at the larger region, you are looking at a inference on an average inference. Okay, on a bigger region. So it depends upon the application. Say if the objects are very small, okay, and still I want to do some kind of thing. Say I want to detect small objects. Then if I take 11 cross 11, I may miss the object information within that 11 cross 11. Okay, it may be overlapping with the non-object information, and essentially I may not be able to identify the object location appropriately. So in that case, 3 cross 3 is good. Okay, but if there is a bigger object at 3 cross 3, if I need to take, then I think it's not necessary. I can't get good details of it. Okay, to get the reasonable details, I need at least some reasonable size of the kernel. Okay, this is domain aspects, but design aspects are also there. So which I will probably discuss little in the later course. But there is a net called VZZ, which uses all 3 cross 3, all kernels as 3 cross 3. The reason it says is, see, if you use 3 cross 3 kernel here, okay, and use another 3 cross 3 kernel here, okay, and to get this, then this point essentially is looking at 3 cross 3 here, and this point is looking at 5 cross 5 in the original image. Okay, you can back calculate that. Here, if assume that this one convolution layer, this is another convolution layer. Okay, just for instance, this neuron is looking at 3 cross 3 here. This looks at another, say around this, you have one more 3 cross 3, right? So for each pixel, it is looking 3 cross 3. Essentially, it is looking at 5 cross 5 when I want to see a information that I have here. Okay, so if rather than directly taking 5 cross 5 in one layer of convolution, I can also take it as 2 layers of convolution. That essentially helps us to get the finer details and finer to coarser details. Okay, so in that way, it is more efficient feature extraction strategy. Okay, that is being shown in VZZ. But all the, and it's also computationally advantageous. We can see that the number of weights required to take a smaller kernels are less compared to do convolution with bigger kernel size. Okay, so given all that, 3 cross 3 kernel is usually used if we don't have any idea, especially in some networks, well-known networks like VZZ. But there is always a like a trade-off. Like we can still start with 5 cross 5 in some cases. Okay, and the combination, as I said, 3 cross 3 will give some set of features, 5 cross 3 convolution will give some set of features, 7 cross 7 will give another set of features. Combining all these features together also makes a good inference. That is being done in another network called GoogleNet. Okay, so they use that kind of technique. So it's in some sense a design parameter. Hope.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So there are some intuition we can draw. If we take this much of kernel size, what happens? But like on the top of it, or like over that, it's design parameters. They are design parameters. Yeah, fine. So any other questions now on CNNs? See, what is essentially difference between convolution neural network and feed-forward neural network? As we discussed, each neuron doesn't connect to all neurons. So the computational cost, especially in learning the parameters, the number of learned parameters are very less. That is one thing. And the same weights are shared across the whole region. The reason is we don't have any special bias over one region versus other region, because all regions in a spatial domain are equally important. Okay, so that naturally gives a nice processing for feature extraction, especially in image processing and computer vision or video processing. Okay, and that is one other aspect which is different in feed-forward neural network. Each is independently assigned with different weight for the next connection to the previous layer to the next layer. Okay, and the other thing is data dimension is preserved. Okay, and we have a combination of convolution layers, sampling layers, and fully connected layers. See, after we do all that, we get some features, fine features. Okay, here if you see, this 4 cross 4 only, but this feature looks at 5 cross 5 here. This looks at 10 cross 10 here. This looks at reasonably even bigger dimension here because there is a convolution here. Okay, so this looks at even bigger dimension here. So if you see essentially a feature value here, that is maybe looking at 15 cross 15 region in the original image. Okay, so it takes combined inference of 15 cross 15 region in a single feature value here, and that different variants of such features are taken. Okay, all may not look exactly in the same way because all kernels are different. Okay, so and all these now are vectorized and connected to the final layer. that is classification layer or the 10x1 output layer. Okay, and here back propagation happens in a conventional way. Okay, so you have a fully connected layer after this is also called flattened layer. Okay, and then you have here it is exactly weights, all weights are connected and so on, feed forward network. Okay, from here whatever errors you get, you make it again into 2 dimensions, because you need for back propagation here, okay, 2-dimensional matrix of errors. Okay, from here you apply whatever forward you have done downsampling or some pooling, you have to do unpooling or upsampling for errors. Okay, for back propagation. Here you have done convolution, you need to do correlation for back propagation. Again downsampling, upsampling for back propagation, and so on. Okay, so that's how it is led. Fine. So I hope this is also clear. If I have 6 maps in previous layer and if I need to get 12 maps in the next layer, how do I design, how many number of kernels are needed? Hope this is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So can one of you tell actually the number of kernels that are required? If I have 6 maps here, okay, if I need 12 maps here, okay, I wanted to use 5x5 convolution operation. Okay, and then how many kernels are required here? Can I get an answer?
6.
Okay. 6.
72 5x5 kernels.
Yeah, 72 5x5 or 6 what dimension?
Sir, like similar dimensions can be changed, won't it?
No. See, if you say 6, it means that at each, see, if you want to get 1 kernel here, if you want to get 1 map here, you need to use 5x5 convolution value, convolution with 5x5, convolution with another 5x5, convolution with another 5x5, like that 6 5x5s you have to use. 6 into 5 you use to get only 1 feature map here. Okay. Similarly, 12 feature
Similarly for others.
Yeah, 12 into 6 into 5x5. Okay, that's essentially is needed. So if you need to get from 64 maps to 128 maps, okay, then you need to do essentially 128 into 64, okay, into 5x5 or 7x7, whatever. Okay, that's the number of weights or the kernels, like kernel elements to be learned. Hope this is clear. Okay, so any other questions now on convolution neural networks? So for this course, it is good enough to understand how the convolution neural networks work. Okay, especially in the forward direction, what they do. Okay, intuitive understanding of them, and then how they are capable of extracting features. Okay, and doing classification and so on. Okay, and we then discussed on some of the computer vision tasks. That some idea on that is good enough, in sense that you need not go to the minute details there, but it is good enough how are they done or tackled. So any questions? I'm just going through the slides. So the next problem that we discussed through convolution networks is segmentation operation. Segmentation means you have to label each pixel. Okay, it's not labeling the whole image. Okay, at pixel level is required. Okay, and hence the dimension of the input is and output are same, and hence the final here you should not get 1-dimensional vector. Okay, you have to get 2-dimensional matrix of features, and that has to have the same dimension of original image, and they should be able to give us the labels. Okay, and they are constructed like that, are designed like that, and trained exactly in the same way. You have the label at each pixel, and you see whether the output of the predictions from the network are agreeing with that. If not, you back propagate. Okay, exactly same thing. But for computational reasons, people make downsampling and then upsampling. This is called encoder and this is decoder and so on. Okay. All are through convolution operations only. Nothing, no feed forward, like fully connected layer here. Okay, no 1 dimension. We are not coming back to 1 dimension here anytime. Okay, so for upsampling, we do unpooling and so on. So they have plenty of applications now, all the autonomous driving and all. Okay, even smart city kind of applications. So many of these things are being driven by it. Okay, they are also applicable in wide variety of areas like satellite image processing, okay, even industrial automation and so on. So object detection is the thing that we have discussed. Here we want to precisely identify where the object is. If there is a single object, what we want to do is what is the class of object? That is one inference we want to get. And what is the XY coordinates and HW coordinates? XY is where it is starting, HW is height and width of the object. So this information is real numbers. So we apply regression. This information is classification score or class label. So we apply classification. Both of them can be put together and keep back propagating from both sides to adjust the weights and so on. Initially, the evolution of deep learning or convolutional networks was limited by GPU processing abilities. So people have made two parallel architectures here. Each are trained on different GPU clusters or whatever at that time. Okay, so and could materialize this training. But now there are powerful GPU computers available, so we are able to train. So same is the case even if you have more objects. For each object, you need to identify whether there is an object or not. Okay, it's a binary classification. Okay, and what are the XY HWs of that object if it is there, or regions of interest of the object. Then you need to specifically tell what object it is. Okay, and then HYXW more accurately. Okay, that is done here. So this is referred to as fast RCN, and this is one of the very well-known technique for object detection. Those who want to work or understand in this area, what they should focus is you should be able to understand very clearly the cost function. Okay, if you want to if you go through if you want to understand any paper, what is important is what is input data. Okay, what are output data, output variables you are expecting. Okay, in what way, and then the architecture. Okay, where are the loss functions associated and what is the loss function? Okay, and built upon what variables. Okay, that's all you need to understand mainly. After that, the backpropagation and so on, those who want to really work in this area should understand. Okay, so but to get the know-how knowledge or how they work, okay, or just to understand what they are doing, it is good enough to understand the input, output, architecture, and then the loss functions. Okay, right. So now you can ask any other questions. Otherwise, I will probably move on to the discussions. So there are plenty of references. Okay, there are very good papers in most of the top conferences. Very good data sets and so on. You can see the informations here. Any questions now? So there were several projects students have done. So now we are don't have direct access. Okay, but some of the first batch student itself has done reasonably good work. Putting some of the cameras in the campus. Okay, and trying to do segmentation and classification of vehicles. Okay, in the parking lot, automatically annotate the parking lots. Okay, and then make a crowd counting on some important data sets and so on. Yeah, you can ask any questions now.
Sir, what is multivariate regression? You talked about linear regression, but I came across a word of multivariate regression. What is this?
Okay. So I think, see, univariate means only one variable. Multivariate means feature vector having multiple dimensions. So it's W1 X1 plus W2 X2 plus based on, say, if you have input output relationship with X input feature vector having multiple variables or multiple features to the output variable single one. That's one thing. Or the output variables are also multiple. So previously we are trying to get only cost, right? Cost of the house or something. But say, for example, I want to understand the cost, safety, okay, and then probably any other aspect. Okay, then I think 3 output variables I want to predict. They call multivariate regression, I think.
Okay, sir.
So then the regression can be done each independently of each, say, all input features to one output variable or together also. So you can formulate, then the y minus W transpose X is there, right? That W transpose X will become a W becomes a matrix. So then y becomes a vector. Okay, y minus W into X. So, and hence the whole thing is a vector minimization rather than that doesn't become a scalar. Y is not a scalar, right? So then you have a matrix as W to be found. So the variables to be found are W matrix, not the W vector. Yeah. So slightly different optimization is required. So you need to write in some matrix equations, and then you have to differentiate with respect to the vector to matrix kind of differentiation. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. I'm stop sharing the slides. So I see that the half the class is here. Okay, I think half the class is still probably taking care of their respective aspects. So far in the course, now we have seen actually 2 programming assignments and 2 written assignments you people have completed, right? So programming assignment 2, I think all have not submitted. Okay, but submit it. So what I'm expecting is probably tomorrow we will get to know about the final exam and semester exam, how we are going to conduct and when and so on. Okay, some of the details of it. So based on that, we will discuss even the final exam aspects for this course. But other than final exam, remaining things we can freeze now in the discussion and planning. So what I suggest is, can we take, because written assignment 1, written quiz 1, we have taken only 2 quizzes, I think, right? Even quizzes wise. You have taken quiz 1, quiz 2. And third quiz on neural networks and regression, I requested Vamsi, one of the TA, to get ready. So probably I would suggest that on a convenient day. So we can take the third quiz. That may be for say 20 minutes. Okay, maximum of half an hour. Like, yeah, Vamsi, you can tell.
Nothing. Actually, I'm ready with the questions.
Okay, so 15 questions, 30 minutes, right? 20 minutes or 30 minutes?
Yes, sir. Around 20 to 30, 25 minutes.
Yeah, fine.
It's
Okay.
an optimal.
So maximum 30 minutes we assume. Okay. Let us probably, what do you feel? Because I think that will give us more, that will conclude the whole thing with at least multiple choice questions kind of assessment, and gives me an inference, okay, on what you have understood. So what I'm thinking is, let us wait for the decision on the administrative aspects. Okay, after that, so in the next week, let us schedule next Wednesday itself. We can schedule, probably, if that is fine for all. Okay, next Wednesday 10 to 11, same time we will schedule. Okay, and complete the quiz. Okay, that's only the thing that we need to do. Probably again online, connecting all together. So other than that, what we do is, mini project is there that I request each of you. Probably I think we will set the timeline for it as well. For that, I request each of you, or suggest each of you, to make 5 to maximum 8 minutes video. Okay, so that video presentation is like video presentation plus demo together. Okay, you can make actually just very minimal number of slides. No need to give much about the introduction of the problem and so on. Okay, so probably for each slide what should be there, we will again send. Okay, so what we need is data set details, problem definition and data set details. Okay, that's probably 1 slide or maximum 2 slides. Okay, and then the methodology, architecture you have developed, and comparisons or the quantitative metrics you have done, and visual results. Okay, that's probably another slide. And then probably conclusions, that's all. Okay, so conclusions, and then whatever you want to tell on the like implementation aspects, any other things that you want to mention that you have spent time on. Okay, and you have found out in the project. So that's all. Maximum 5 slides we'll make, or maximum 5 to 8 slides. Okay, with that we will request you to, and a last slide can be with demo. So demo is a nicely recorded demonstration of your execution of the algorithm. Okay, So even I don't want you to explain the codes and so on, but I need the cost function, as I said. Okay, for any method in machine learning, the algorithmic details, okay, and then input, output, and cost function. These are very important. So these details I need with explaining the variables and so on. What exactly how done. So any implementation aspects you can tell. So such thing you can make some real, some demonstration on some videos to make a demo video that you can attach in the last slide. That's all. This whole thing probably should not be crossing 8 minutes. Okay, I will not be seeing any video more than 8 minutes. Okay, so maximum 5 to 8 minutes you make, try to make it very concisely putting. Okay, drop what all you feel unnecessary, but put which is all important, like architectural details or any other aspects, domain details and so on. So that we will, I request each of you to upload in some Google Drive or Google Classroom. Okay, then we will see that and evaluate that. So with that, probably the all internal evaluation is done. Okay, so what I'm expecting to conclude is the programming assignment 2 to be completed and submitted by all. Okay, then that will, I think today is last date, but we can extend, okay, a few more days on that, or maximum of 1 week we can extend if you people, because of the several different situations, you're getting delayed. So, and then the quiz 3, that is for 15 like questions and 30 minutes maximum. That is also next Wednesday. So by next Wednesday, these 2 will be done. And probably the next Wednesday we can target for our mini project presentations. So I think that before 19th, anyway, I don't think exams will be there. They will keep exams and so on. So if you're all comfortable, okay, so then 12th, that is next Wednesday, we have the quiz 3 for concluding the internal assessment on your understanding, okay, and submission of programming assignment. And 19th, that is the subsequent Wednesday, we have actually the mini project timeline for the submission of mini project presentation videos. So that if you want to extend maximum, we can extend up to 20 to 23, but I think I would suggest to wrap up so that you are done with the course. Any inputs or any like concerns or comments from your side?
Sir, you're saying 19th as a deadline, but if we have exams, then will the deadline be changed?